calling this meeting of the Plan Commission to order. I believe the next step is for us to take attendance. Is that correct, Mark?
Correct.
Yeah. Call the roll.
We'll update this as we have some other individuals get in. Mr. Koulibaly.
Happy Friday, Monday.
Miss Davy.
I'm here.
Councilmember
Should
Ford.
we sit to soundbar?
Here.
Mr. Groth.
Here.
Mr. Kiefer. I think he's still trying to get in. Mr. Mitchell.
It is set to
Here.
soundbar.
Mr. Perry.
Here.
Mr. Marshall.
I'm here.
Soundbar.
Mr. Hintz.
No microphone should be.
And Mrs. Pelosi. All right, 6 present at this time.
Mark, John Kiefer has joined.
Oh, all right. Thank you, John. So just a quick reminder as we get started here again, we do ask that everyone keep themselves muted during the meeting and unmute yourself when you are called on to speak. In order to raise your hand, what you do is open the participant list, which can be found on the bottom right side of your screen. Once you have that open, you can go ahead and hover over your own name. From there, just click the little icon that says raised hand. It'll show your hand raised, and the chair can call on you. When you're done speaking, we ask that you once again mute yourself and then click that same little raise hand and it will lower it for you. Mr. Ford, if you could continue, thank you.
Yes, our first item is the approval of the August 17th minutes. Can I get a motion?
I'll move to accept them as written.
Margie moves acceptance. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please, or do we need to do a roll call vote online?
We are online, so we do need to do a roll call vote.
All right, please call the roll.
Mr. Groth.
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer. Mr. Kiefer. Mr. Mitchell.
Mr. Kiefer, aye.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell. You there, Justin? Mr. Perry.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Councilmember Ford.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. 5-0.
All right, our first item is the architectural building plan review for a proposed transit center building at 110 Pearl Avenue. The clerk will accept the staff report as part of the record, and I will ask if there were any site inspections, if you can raise your hand. It's like,
Groth, Perry, Davy. Thank you.
yep, turn it over to staff.
Thank you. Can you go to the next slide?
Yes.
All right, so we are looking here at the downtown transit center located at 110 Pearl Avenue. This is the slide here shows you the subject site. Go to the next slide, please. Here's an aerial image of the area with the downtown transit center and then the existing building that's there. If you could go to the next slide, please. So in 1989, the city of Oshkosh constructed the current downtown transit center, which is the subject site that we're looking at today. It's just south of High Avenue and on the corner of Market Street and Pearl Avenue. The current building that's there doesn't provide public restrooms or staff break rooms or fare kiosks. And so the new building that we're looking at today provides all of those things. If you remember, on August 3rd, Plan Commission had a workshop with the architect, and Plan Commission was supportive of the project. And so now the applicant is requesting the formal architectural review for the proposed building. If you go to the next slide, please. This is, the other one is just a landscaping. I don't know if we want to touch on that, Mark, or not.
Yep.
So some of the landscaping that you can see there on the south side of the property, forget how many points, but they're removing, if you can remember, they're removing a bench area that is not frequently used, updating the signage there, and then there's different landscaping points, Hicks yew trees, Shadona switchgrasses, and daylilies and mulch. Next slide. This is a floor plan of the proposed building. Shows the break rooms. The upper left image is a alternate break room design. It shows some public restrooms, and you can see on the far right is the existing brick building that they would attach to that would be used for storage. You can also see the customer service area and the an office area as well. Next slide.
Hey, Brandon. I got John from Cooney's on as well, but I just want to clarify they're not public restrooms. It would just be just 2 single-user staff restrooms.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. But when we get to, if and when we get to an expansion of our transit facility, then that's something we'll evaluate again at that time. But with this, it's just not large enough, and there were some public safety concerns since this is such a small addition to being able to have a safe area for that. So currently it's staff restrooms and a little bit of break space, and then we'll have a customer service window area at the front. So I just want to clarify that, because I know that I think one of the porters misrepresented that as well. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear. This building is a staff building, other than the customer service window. And then at some point in the future, we're still planning on having more of a public facility when we have more space available.
Thank you. I will make sure the staff report is updated, and if you could go to the next slide, please. So here are the building facades, showing mostly brick masonry units. The majority of it is to match, I believe, the existing, as close as possible, match the existing brick that from the downtown transit center. There are some color alterations of different masonry brick, different facades. And the rest of it is mostly glazing, and the architect was proposing a rubber low slope roof with aluminum trim to be silver in color. And again, if you remember from the workshop, they were going to apply some paint to the addition to the existing transit center to match that trim. Next slide. These are just some 3-dimensional images. This one and the next slide are somewhat from the same angle to get an idea of what it may look like. And with that, staff believes that the new transit center building will not have a negative impact on the surrounding area, and the structure will be visually harmonious with the intended character of the general vicinity. Staff recommends approval of the architectural design of the transit building as proposed.
Thank you. Are there any technical questions from Planning Commission?
Looks like I see Margie.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, my question actually pertains to the landscaping that was called out in this. I believe they're showing maple trees, and I was just curious if the planning department shares that page we have in the zoning, in zoning, that says that there's some preferred trees that we don't use. And because 6 or 7 different types of maples are listed in there, I just wanted to be sure that, the city forester or somebody was involved with the choosing of the landscaping there.
Yeah, during final site plan review, they'll have to specifically call out what variety of maple, because you are right. For example, autumn blaze maple are listed as overplanted and are not recommended. So when we get to that final step, they will have to specifically call out exact species that are being planted.
Okay.
Are there any other technical questions? It doesn't look like it, so we'll take a statement from the applicant.
So either Jim or John, either of you would like to add any comments?
Yeah, John Wallenkamp, CUNY Architects. Just everything's been touched on. If there was any other technical questions, we're here to answer them. Our goal is, as mentioned, is to kind of enhance the building with the existing structure. Kind of that roof is pretty heavy on the existing structure. So that's really the reason for changing the color of that main roof. And then we're for sure will address the landscape species. But other than that, it's pretty simple. We're here for any questions.
Yeah, I concur with John if you have any technical questions for him, but just from a staff or transit perspective, we're excited about this. I know our staff and drivers are really excited about having at least some break room space down there where they currently do not have any. But I think this is also an opportunity for our passengers and the public as well, because it is going to update that whole area and make it look a lot nicer, as well as eliminate some tripping hazards and improve the safety of that area with some upgraded lighting, some improved pavement as far as replacing or removing those pavers, and then also doing some repair to the concrete. And I think it's just going to be a real nice upgrade to that area. And then, like I said earlier, hopefully at some point in the future, we can do a little bit of an expansion and then offer some more space for public waiting, and then we'll reevaluate the public restrooms and things like that at that time. But we're excited for this. I think it's much needed and overdue, so we're fortunate to be able to do that at this time.
Thank you. Any statements from the public?
So just one thing to note, we do not use the chat for public comments. So if anyone from the public does have questions or comments they'd like to make, now is the time. We are not able to use the chat to answer questions.
Doesn't look like there's any comments there. Is there a closing statement from the applicant?
No, just thanks for everyone's time.
Awesome. Thank you. Then the next thing we need then is a motion from the Land Commission.
I move to accept whatever it is we're supposed to say here as is, and that we do it.
So,
Okay, I second.
so Margie, to clarify, Margie is motioning accepting the recommendations as stated in the staff report. Is there any discussion?
I've got 2 questions, and I'm not seeing where my my hand raise button is.
Go for it, Justin.
What was the rationale for the limited initial phase and not including the public restroom and the other features that would provide a pretty valuable service to the users?
I can answer the limited scope is due to funding. We got a limited amount of ARPA funds, so this is what we were able to do on our current site. We're limited currently to our existing footprint. We don't own any of the land adjacent to there, so basically we're limited to what we currently have as far as a footprint goes. And then specifically, that space constraints just doesn't allow us much room to do anything more than we proposed here. So I think that answers your question. I don't know if you have anything more.
Is there a staff restroom?
Yes, there'll be 2 single stall staff restrooms currently. That's what they have there currently as well.
Just at a minimum, I'd like to note that it's disappointing that that's not being included in some phase. And I know that was part of the initial discussion that we had, that there would be some public restroom features and whatnot. My other question is then, and if you went over this, please accept my apology. I had to re-log in. What was the user engagement for the development of this plan? Did we host sessions that were specifically targeted to users, or do we hand out material to users explaining how they can provide feedback and whatnot?
Yep. So this is more of, I think we're getting this confused a little bit with, we did do a site selection study over the last 2 years. So there was a transit site selection study that was done. And that was prior to receiving any ARPA funds. But over the last 2 years, there was, we had a company called SRF Consultants that did a site selection study. And at that time, we were looking at where, if we ever did expand, where would be the best location for that. So they looked at a number of different locations throughout the city of Oshkosh, not just downtown, had lots of stakeholder meetings, public meetings, and then also ultimately had the Transit Advisory Board and then council evaluate the recommendations, which were to stay on the current site due to basically cost considerations and the fact that any money we invest in transit has to be in use for 40 years as far as public buildings. So that was a 2-year process where there was a lot of engagement. And then the COVID hit towards the end of that study. And then we were notified we were going to receive some ARPA funds at the beginning of 2020 as the pandemic started. And we used those for a lot of COVID mitigation strategies. And then as we started winding those down, we had some extra funds or some funds available yet. So we started looking at what we needed immediately to help us with not only with COVID, but just for upgrading our current site. And that's what led to this plan. And there were opportunities. There's been, with a couple of meetings we've had with Plan Commission, and then we've also presented this to the Transit Advisory Board, and there's always opportunity for public comments through those. But this was the result of being able to have those funds and then figure out what we needed immediately. And again, it's a limited amount of funds, so we did the best we could with those funds to come up with this current plan. And again, to address the public restrooms, we did consult heavily with public safety, and they do not recommend public restrooms. They said it's a real safety concern for both the general public and the users, unless you can have a open building that is staffed whenever the restrooms are open, so that if there's any incidents that they can have easy access to that. And we just don't have the room for it. So they recommended heavily that that's not included until the time which we can have sufficient space to do that. And then there's pluses and minuses with it, and we'll have to evaluate that again at the time when we have the space and the funds available for something like that.
One quick follow-up. Thank you for that explanation. That makes sense. So this is what you're saying is phase one. There was considerable planning involved in the location, maybe not so much the design and the amenities due to timing, but you're planning on coming back with maybe local invested funds at a later date. And at that time, is there a plan or a general idea for engaging users in feedback?
Yes, so those are good questions. So yes, I think you're correct on the first half, and we do have a couple different options for expanding the transit center downtown. And Cooney, who's the architect that's working with us on this plan, has helped us put together a couple different ideas. I mean, they're ideas at this point, because in order to expand beyond our current location, it's going to involve acquiring other land and or property, which is a pretty involved process. So we don't have anything specific at this point, but that's what we're hoping for. And we will see, as far as funding goes, locally, that's up to the council. However, generally with transit projects, we will continue to seek out and apply for grants. And generally transit projects are funded 80% with federal money if we can get a grant to do that. So obviously locally, that's the desire would be to try to get one of those grants so that the city only has to pay 20% versus, 100 or any more or more of a share of that. But we'll see. We still have some potential for some ARPA funds that may be available after this project is done. There are some that are designated for transit. So there is potential that we could do something in the future. I just can't tell you when that is or how it's going to look, because the first step in that process, other than identifying funding, would be to identify if and how we could acquire additional properties. So it's definitely in the plans, and as we go forward, there will be ample opportunity for public involvement if and when we get to that point.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, the clerk can call the roll.
Can I go one more time, or is it too late? I didn't want to just hog everything.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Justin.
I was just curious, Appleton, Fond du Lac, Green Bay, Janesville, do any of those cities have public restrooms or other amenities in their transit station that you're aware of?
Yeah, I can tell you what I know. Fond du Lac does not. Fond du Lac basically has even less than we do. They have a transfer point that doesn't even look any. It may be a quarter of the size of this. It's just basically a shelter where they transfer passengers. I know Sheboygan built a new transit facility about 5-6 years ago, and they do not have public facilities. Appleton does. And they're working on some remodeling in their offices. I don't know if they're doing anything at their platform. Those are the three I'm most familiar with. It varies. Sheboygan doesn't currently, and I'm not sure. They're going through a new building with substantial federal funds, so I'm not sure if that's included in their plans or not, but that's what I'm aware of. I'd say it's probably, my guess is 50-50 or less that have public restrooms, but I'm not positive on that.
Got it, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Not, we can have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Groth,
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
Mr. Marshall,
Aye.
Mr. Coulibaly,
Aye.
Miss Davy,
Aye.
Miss Prop,
Aye.
Mr. Ford, Councilmember Ford, excuse me.
No hurries. Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.
All right, and I see that Vice Chairperson Prop is on the line now. Do you want to take over the duties here, Kathy?
All right, thank you. I'm embarrassed. I didn't know I was going to be chair, and then for some reason the computer had me by the throat. So,
No worries
Sure.
at all. We are on item 2.
all right, item 2, public hearing, conditional use permit request for a communication tower on Bradley Street. And chair will accept the staff report as part of the record. Go ahead, staff.
Thank you.
Inspections.
Oh, site inspections, anybody?
Looks like Mr. Growth.
Okay.
All right, so the subject site is just under 10 acres in size. It's located on the east side of Bradley Street, and the parcel is currently being used for agriculture. It is zoned heavy industrial, and the surrounding area is mostly industrial uses, along with an active railroad to the east. Next slide, please. So here's an aerial view of the subject site. The applicant is proposing to install a cell tower up to 136 feet tall. Cell towers require a conditional use permit within the heavy industrial district. The cell tower will be accessed from Bradley Street with a 12-foot wide access drive, and the tower and associated equipment will be enclosed within a 50-foot by 50-foot fenced-in area. The location of the cell tower and height is meeting all applicable requirements of the zoning ordinance. Also, the tower height has been approved by the FAA. The plans also include 6-foot tall solid fencing around the cell tower and equipment to meet code requirement for buffer and screening. As far as landscaping, street frontage landscaping is required. The site plan shows 2 existing mature trees along the Bradley Street frontage that appear to be meeting the code requirement for street frontage landscaping, and that can be verified during site plan review. As far as paved areas, it's also showing existing mature trees near the proposed paved areas on the site, and that also appears to be meeting the code requirement for landscaping points for paved areas. With that, staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit for the communication tower at 0 Bradley Street, as proposed with the findings and conditions in your staff report.
One additional comment, just because this can't come up at a previous Plan Commission meeting where we were discussing cell towers, the applicants did provide the necessary co-location documentation and statements as required by the code.
Okay. I'll open the public hearing then. Oh, technical questions first. Any technical questions?
I've got just one. It's Justin.
Was that Justin that had one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. We've had a couple different cell towers, and I'm just curious if there is a broader city or regional plan, or I don't know, monitoring or something in place that looks at a broader picture beyond just one lot.
Yeah, so cell towers are highly regulated through the federal government in terms of location and a local municipality's ability to get involved in the placement of them. They do have to provide documentation to us that they have evaluated co-location options in the area before siting a new tower. They did provide that documentation, but the federal regulations in these instances pretty much trump everything of what they're required to provide to us.
Thank you. Just more so, less about the requirements of the federal government and more so just for our own purposes of I don't know, a comprehensive communication system, access all across the city, whatnot. Is there any sort of plan related to our communication systems and whatnot?
Again, no, because of the way it's regulated, it's not something the local government can get involved with. We are allowed to require a conditional use permit and go through this process, but no, the city does not have any cell tower plans or anything like that. It's not something that we get involved with because of the way they're regulated. We have a map showing where they are. That's about it. And again, if they're able to demonstrate an inability to co-locate, the state and federal laws do say they are permitted to build a new tower.
Thanks.
Any other technical questions?
Yes, I was. I can see that the structure itself quite isolated in the lot, and there is a good buffer zone between that and the surrounding neighbors. But I was just wondering, still the neighbors being notified and consulted in any way for the structure to be put in place?
Yep, they are notified similarly to any conditional use permit where we do send that notice out to neighboring property owners.
Anyone else with technical questions? I'm having trouble seeing any hands on my computer.
Yeah, no other technical questions, it looks like.
Okay, then we'll open the public hearing and request a statement from the applicant if the applicant is available.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
My apologies. I can't seem to get the video going, but at least you can hear me. My name is Scott Littell. I'm the petitioner on behalf of Harmony Towers and the landowner, Brian Hegner. Harmony Towers has petitioned the Plan Commission for a conditional use permit for a 136-foot tall monopole tower on Bradley Street. We feel this is an ideal location. It is zoned in heavy industrial. The surrounding properties are heavy industrial for the most part. It is screened by mature trees, and it is also close to residential areas, a driver for cell phone carriers to be on the tower. And we've also complied with the maximum of having other places for co-locators to locate on. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Are there any questions, Mark? I'm not seeing hands.
From Plan Commission, it looks like Miss Davy has a question.
All right, Margie?
I'm just curious. I see that this is currently being used as rented agricultural property. Are they still going to be allowed to farm around the rest of this plot?
Yes, Ms. Davy, they will be.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from Plan Commissioners? Evidently not, Mark, unless you can see someone.
No other Plan Commission member questions.
Okay, then I'll ask for additional public comment. Is there anybody else on the call that wishes to speak to this matter?
I see an Andrew Flowers.
Okay.
Hello,
Go
are you
ahead,
guys
Andrew.
able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, excellent. My name is Andrew Flowers. I am the Senior Real Estate and Construction Manager for AT&T Mobility. And I just wanted to weigh in because Harmony is our vendor that is in the process of seeking this CUP from Oshkosh. And kind of let you guys know why we're requesting to build this particular site. Last year, Oshkosh gave AT&T the ability to build another new tower on EAA's property, which turned out to be a great asset for their event that they just had. And one of the items that we have here at AT&T is a long-term strategic plan to keep increasing the capacity and coverage of the EAA event and surrounding community throughout the year. And this facility will allow us to do that. It sits obviously just to the east of the airport and will be used heavily during the EAA events and will be available for the rest of the year for the rest of the community. This cell tower will also have the newest technology on it and have FirstNet equipment added there for first responders. So we're excited to have the prospects to have this site built. If we end up getting our approvals, this site will be in our 2022 plan to build, and we will try to make it completed just like we did the last tower before the EA event in July of 22. And I'm also available to answer any questions in regards to coverage and technical aspects of the tower if you need that also. Thanks.
Thank you. Any plan commissioners with questions? You see any, Mark?
I do not.
Okay, I guess not then. Anyone else wishing to speak to this cell tower from the public?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So this is Kevin Pollard. I represent SBA Communications, which is the owner of the existing tower located on 28th Avenue. It's approximately 500 feet from the site of the new tower that's being proposed. And so the existing tower has been at that site since 2006. And AT&T, as a mobile service provider, already is located with its equipment on that tower. And the existing tower does have capacity to facilitate upgrades to AT&T's equipment. We do object to this application for the permit for a number of reasons, at least two reasons. One being that really the state statute and the city's ordinance is designed to promote co-location on existing towers. And I don't entirely agree with the sentiment that the city has no ability to regulate this. There's a state statute which preempts certain factors that should not be considered, but it doesn't completely strip the city of the ability to regulate by conditional use permit whether or not the tower is appropriate as a conditional use. And what the state statute and the ordinance require is that the applicant demonstrate with evidence that there is an economic burden and a reason for co-locate, or that it can't co-locate on the existing tower. I think there was reference made to an affidavit or a statement. I haven't seen that, but I can tell you that AT&T has not, they have not sought any reduction in rent or modifications to the existing lease on this tower. In fact, they completed an upgrade amendment and added additional equipment just in 2019. So the statute also requires that an applicant seeking to construct a new tower evaluate the feasibility of co-location on an existing tower. So we certainly don't think they've done that. They haven't contacted SBA saying, hey, we have issues with the existing tower. And I was intending to submit an radio frequency coverage comparison, which we will provide after the hearing, showing that the coverage is essentially the same on either tower. And so that goes into the other part of our objection, which is the city ordinance. One of the factors in conditional use permits is whether the potential public benefit outweighs potential adverse factors or adverse impacts. And really, I mean, since there already is a tower there is essentially no public benefit to adding a second tower. Again, the statute and ordinance is designed to prevent this type of clustering, so you don't end up with a bunch of cell towers stacked right next to each other. There's obviously adverse visual effects, adverse effects on property value, potential for interference. So I would submit that the application does not comply with the conditional use factor, that there be a public benefit outweighing a potential public harm. And so really for those two reasons, we don't believe that this application does comply with the statutes, and we object to the application on that ground. And I'm here to just answer any questions you may have regarding how the state statute works, and also, you know, any questions related to the existing tower.
Okay, questions? And I'm hearing a feedback.
Is everybody hearing that echo in the sound?
I think I've got that muted, so hopefully that does not take place any longer.
Okay, are there questions for this gentleman from the Plan Commission? I don't know why I'm not seeing hands.
Yeah, I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. All right, then, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on cell tower?
Can everyone hear me? This is Paul Jonas at Michael Beston Friedrich.
Yes.
Yes.
Can
Hello,
you
everyone.
slow down in the background, sir? I think you're where we're getting the echo.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. And is that echo free, I hope?
It does sound better, yes.
Okay,
No,
thank you.
no, that's back.
Gosh. Okay.
Go
try
ahead.
it that way. Is that any better?
Yeah, go ahead, we'll try it.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. I'm the attorney representing Harmony Towers with Michael Beston Friedrich in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And just wanted to speak to a couple of the comments raised by Mr. Pollard. And actually most, if not all, of the points that were raised by Mr. Pollard were addressed in both the sworn statement that was provided as required by statute by Mr. Tim Brennan of AT&T, and also in the support letter that was provided by Andrew Flowers, who spoke earlier. So first of all, it is not true that AT&T has not reached out to SBA to try to negotiate more reasonable terms, I'll say, than those that are currently in place on the existing nearby tower. In fact, we included with our submission what we refer to as a TOS letter, but it is a very site-specific letter that requests that SBA engage in some sort of reasonable negotiation to come to something closer to economic terms and functional terms that even begin to approach those that are offered by Harmony. And the reality is that these negotiations between SBA and AT&T, two large companies, take place on a regional and national basis. So the reality is that those discussions have been and continue to be ongoing. But in the meantime, AT&T has a decision to make. They can either remain on the SBA tower at terms that, frankly, are millions of dollars more over the term of the lease, or relocate to the proposed Harmony Tower, which will save AT&T said millions of dollars, and importantly, as noted in Andrew's letter, will translate to lower rates charged to the citizens of Oshkosh surrounding area, and in fact, all users of wireless services. So the idea that there's no public benefit to this tower, that fact alone would refute that statement. But of course, there is more to it than that. One of the many reasons that this proposed tower makes sense for both AT&T, Harmony, and most importantly, the city of Oshkosh is that both the lease structure and the physical structure allow for the easy replacement, upgrade of equipment as new technology becomes available. The whole idea is that this new tower is flexible such that as new technologies become available, they can be applied to the tower quickly, easily, and economically. The SBA tower offers none of those benefits. And despite efforts on AT&T's part, SBA, frankly, is here today for one reason, to maintain their monopoly. And this is an argument and a discussion that we have, as you can probably imagine, in many municipalities throughout the state, and the discussion is always the same. SBA argues that we haven't tried to negotiate. We have. SBA argues that their current tower is both economically and technologically feasible. It is not. And I could go line by line through Andrew's letter in particular, and also the sworn statement from Mr. Brennan, but I think they speak for themselves. So with regard to 660404, which is the state statute that governs cell tower siting, the requirement is that if the applicant is going to propose a new tower, they have to explain whether or not they considered co-location, and if they didn't, why it is either economically burdensome, technologically not feasible, or will not result in the same coverage. And in fact, we meet all three of those standards here. So respectfully, I would suggest that the interests of AT&T and Harmony here are, of course, to expand their business and to be in business. But as importantly, they are to increase the coverage and the service provided to the citizens of Oshkosh. And I would further respectfully submit that none of those goals would be accomplished by continuing to maintain SBA's monopoly in this market. And happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the Planning Commission? I'm having echo still.
Should be good now.
Any questions, Mark?
I'm not seeing any, no.
Okay. Thank you very much for your input. I see we have several issues here. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak on this cell tower? Anyone else from the public wishing to speak on the cell tower?
I do not see any.
Okay, then I will ask for closing statements from the applicant, if the applicant wishes to respond to any of this.
I see Mr. Kulabong with his hand raised. Do you have questions for?
Go ahead, Mr. Mamadou.
Yes. Okay, I would just want to ask a question to SBA. I see that in the statement, they try to show that AT&T step is not lawful. And I also, at the beginning, we didn't see the fact that AT&T was renting their tower. Now that is all clear to us. I was just wondering, beside that argument, is there anything, any impediment to their business by the fact that AT&T is acquiring a newer tower, beside losing AT&T business as a renter to their tower?
Hello, this is Kevin for SBA. I guess the answer to your question is essentially no, there's no other impediment. I mean, we are a competitor, we're a tower builder. But on the other hand, you know, when SBA built these towers, they built them subject to local zoning laws. And now new tower, you know, Harmony is a new tower company who's trying to say, you can't apply local zoning laws and you have to let us build a new tower. I mean, they may not be saying that in every case, you know, but what I'm here to do is to educate you that yes, as a local government, you can regulate where new towers are going. You can do that by ordinance. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
yep.
Okay,
This is Paul Jonas. Would I just be able to add one statement to that respectfully?
it's all right with me.
I would just also add that I think another business impact for SBA is the fact that I don't know if there are any other carriers on the current tower, but if AT&T were to leave and the tower were to go vacant by the city of Oshkosh ordinance, I believe if it were vacant for a year, the tower would need to come down. So I do believe that may be another motivation for trying to basically force AT&T to stay on the tower, despite it not being a very good arrangement.
There are other.
Sorry, gentlemen, this is not a situation for a back and forth. Kathy, I'll turn it back over to you. I think we're at applicant. Any closing statements by the applicant?
Okay,
I guess, Scott Littrell, are you part of the applicant?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So in closing, we meet all the requirements, in fact, exceed the requirements as put forth in the ordinance for a conditional use permit for this tower. So with that being said, I would like to respectfully ask for your approval of the CUP today.
okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll close the public hearing then, and back to the commission for a motion.
Justin, make a motion to adopt the recommendations and findings as stated in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Commission?
Yeah, I've got a question, Kathy.
Sure, go ahead.
Mark, this is the, I don't know, third maybe tower that I think has come up in my term, and it seems that each time there is what plays out to be some sort of, you know, legal trial of sorts as to the merits of it, and but at the same time, you know, staff says that there's nothing that we can do, and so I'm just wondering if there's a step that maybe could be added to this process that, I don't know, requests these sort of statements ahead of time, and then they get included into the packet, or some sort of step that eliminates the idea that we are somehow interpreting I don't know, a law that you say that we don't have the ability to interpret. It seems like a weird position that we're in on this.
Yeah, so I can say this. We've discussed this with our attorney's office during prior towers similar to this one. And the answer I've gotten for them in our review is the documentation that we need has been permitted, which is why we are recommending approval of the tower to you. I'm not sure what additional information, it's a situation, I think, where regardless of what we get, you are going to have competing tower companies that likely come before you to make an argument of their opinion of the case. Our interpretation as the planning office and review of the documentation is that they do meet the code requirements, which is why we have recommended approval to you.
Any other commissioners with questions, comments? Well, I guess I have one. It seems to me that this is something that might end up going to the courts if these two companies, if the city approves this application and there's still a dispute. I'm wondering if that's the ultimate solution, Mark.
Yeah, if either entity would choose to challenge it, they are within our rights. We feel as municipality, we have done our due diligence and our appropriate review.
Okay. Any other plan commissioners with comments or questions?
Kathy, I've got one more if I can go. This is Justin.
Sure, go ahead.
Is there ever a scenario where proximity to existing towers makes any difference to the city?
Ultimately, if the documentation can be provided that those three criteria that we've discussed over the past half an hour here are relevant, the staff under our reading of the ordinance would still recommend approval to you. If they failed to do that, then I think we are well within our rights as a municipality to recommend denial. But if they have went through and done their statutory requirements, we would recommend approval of the tower. We have no basis for recommending denial at that point.
Any other comments by plan commissioners? If not, then let's call the roll.
Mr. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Gross.
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer.
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Perry.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Mr. Kulabali.
Aye.
Ms. Davy.
Aye.
Ms. Prop.
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
Okay, we'll go on to item number 3, specific implementation plan amendment for a drive-through lane addition at 1580 South Keller. Any site inspections? The chair will accept the staff report as part of the record. Go ahead, staff.
Thank you. So the subject site is located on the east side of South Kohler Street. It's zoned suburban mixed use with a planned development overlay. It's used as a restaurant with a drive-through, which is Culver's, and the surrounding area is commercial uses. The applicant is proposing no changes to the use of the site. The only change they're proposing is an addition to the existing drive-through. Next slide, please. So the drive-through lane will be on the rear east side of the building, on the outside of the existing drive-through lane, and it will provide an additional 6 stalls of stacking for the drive-through. It will result in the loss of 11 parking stalls along the rear east property line. However, the remaining parking stalls on the site still exceed the minimum parking requirement for the district and size of the building. And there is still sufficient space for one-way traffic around the drive-through to get around the building to the north side of the site. Next slide. So the only other addition besides the drive-through lane is the menu board for the drive-through lane. As proposed, it'd be about 46 square feet and 6 feet 3 inches tall. A base standard modification is needed for the second drive-through sign, as drive-through signs are considered daily notice signs, and only one is allowed per business. So staff is supportive of the second drive-through sign, as it is needed to provide service to the drive-through lane. Also, it's minimally visible from the public right-of-way. However, staff is recommending a condition that 20 landscaping points be provided around that drive-through sign to offset that BSM. The applicant also needs a BSM for the increased drive-through sign size. Code allows a maximum size of 24 square feet for drive-through signs. As proposed, it's about 46 square feet. The applicant has noted that this is the standard size for all Culver's menu boards nationwide, and it is needed to provide complete product identification and maintain efficiency for the drive-through. So staff is again supportive of this BSM for increased size, as it is needed to accommodate the full menu and support efficient use of that drive-through. And also with the additional landscaping also serves to offset that. And so with that, staff recommends approval of the SIP amendment with the findings and conditions in your staff report.
Okay, technical questions? Commission?
Councilmember Ford, it looks like, has his hand raised.
Yeah, so this might be for the more technical question for the applicant, but the staff report, they said that even with the loss of the 11 spaces, they still meet code requirements for parking. But I know that place is jumping, and just curious if there's still room for the employees to park there, or if they're being pushed over into the neighboring lot.
We can kind of ask that as the applicant when it's their turn to speak.
Okay, any other technical questions from the commission? I'm not seeing any.
Yep, don't see any.
Then we'll open it up to the public. Is there the applicant there? We would like to request a statement.
Is Mr. McGuire, or is that you? Mac McGuire, I think it might be.
My name is Chris McGuire. Yes, I'm here.
Thanks, sir.
Are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm on a project in Jacksonville, Florida right now, so I appreciate the way that you're able to do this meeting. I would like to thank the city staff for all of their help and guidance. Culver's did approve double drive-throughs for all existing locations at the beginning of 2021. The events of the last year have really brought this to the forefront, and it's worked out very well from the perspective of, we found that the double drive-through helps the guest experience for a quicker and smoother flow. We have seen an increase in the percentage of sales. Obviously, during the pandemic, it was 100% through the drive-through, but even since then, there are a number of guests that have chosen not to come into stores. So it's a larger percentage of drive-through business. And being able to accommodate the additional 6 cars does make that experience better for the guest. With respect to the employee parking and the amount of parking that we do have there, we do believe that we have adequate parking. Elsewhere in the country, I'm many times challenged to try to prove why I need more than 30 or 40 parking spaces on an entire site. We're very grateful for the way that the city of Oshkosh has approached this. We do understand and agree with the stipulations as proposed, which included the 20 points of additional landscaping in the new island. And if approved, we're hopeful to do this project yet this year. And that's all I had, unless there are any questions for me.
Any questions for the applicant?
No, I'll say thank you for answering my question.
All right, thank you. Anyone else from the public that wants to speak on this drive-through request? Anybody else wishing to speak? Are you seeing any, Mark?
I do not see anyone else.
Okay. Then we'll close public comment. The applicant has just spoken, so he need not give any more statements unless he wants to. Back to the commission for a motion.
I move to adopt the finding and recommendation as stated in the staff report.
I second.
Discussion. Any discussion from the commission? Again, I'm not seeing any. If there is no discussion, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Groth.
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer.
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Perry.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Mr. Kulabali.
Aye.
Ms. Davy.
Aye.
Ms. Prop.
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you.
Is there any other business to come before the commission before adjournment?
I have just a couple of brief comments as we try to transition back into virtual meetings. Apologize to planning commission members. I know there's a little bit of confusion because you had received a second meeting invite for the next meeting. In the interest of trying to get the meeting links out to more people, we've created those meeting links earlier and including them onto our notice that we send to all property owners. Instead of just the old notice used to say check back and the link will be available. In doing so, I think we got a little bit of confusion because you had an older link for this meeting and a new link for the meeting in 2 weeks. So as Ms. Prop had kind of mentioned to me earlier, what I'll start doing, because we do want to get these notices out as early as possible so as many people can attend as possible, on Mondays prior to meetings, I'll start sending you an email with the meeting link for that specific meeting, just to hopefully have it fresh in your email and ready to go for Tuesday. But just wanted to explain where that confusion came from. We were trying to get kind of the notices out early and to more people, but we did create a little bit of unintended confusion when we did that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Anything else before we adjourn? Mark,
Nope, I don't see anything.
then a motion for adjourning is in order.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
And it is virtual. I do have to do a roll call for it.
Okay.
Mr. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Groth.
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer.
Aye.
Mr. Perry.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Mr. Coulibaly.
Aye.
Miss Davy.
Aye.
Miss Prop.
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.